Hi. So I'm back, and you may not like how back I'm not, because this video message is really just to tell you that I'm married with a kid and a kid on the way, and my writing is not speeding up anytime soon. And that's okay. If there's anything I'm learning in this very long writing journey is that who you are defines what you're writing way more than you realize, especially as a young person, as a young writer. And if I had had my way and I had written Peter 10 years ago or more, it wouldn't be as good as it's going to be. Or I say Peter, the whole series. Which leads me to, I've been thinking about suffering and how suffering impacts your art so much. So many years I wandered alone, lonely, hoping to have more friends, a wife, community. And who I was just needed to keep running. Like, I've moved dozens of times. I've lived in 11 states, one other country than this one. And there's a piece of me in a healthy way that likes to travel. And there's a piece of me that is always running toward new purpose and new meaning because it's a self-value issue. And I'm working a lot on that. Just learning to love me and accept me. And that's been an important part of my journey in many ways, because thinking about writing, I'm going to have to learn how to write without suffering. When I was younger, I lived through some pretty rough times. No regrets about those times, but they were rough. And I loved just reading my books and escaping. Well, then I get older and I just wanted to continue escaping. I just got to start writing those stories instead of reading those stories. And that fueled a lot of writing. And honestly, since I got married, other than when I had paternity leave to focus a lot of time on getting Advent complete, I've barely touched anything. And I've had lots of story ideas. But having connection, having a son, having another child on the way, my suffering is not the same. I suffer because I don't always get as much sleep at night as I would like. But generally, my life doesn't have the suffering it did of 10 years ago, or certainly not my childhood. So I'm going to have to learn to change my fuel source for writing. And it's an interesting position I never thought about being in. But if I want to be a professional writer, which I do, then I have to professionally learn how to fuel that desire. Now, I've got a lot in my life going on, and I have responsibilities. Foremost of being a husband, being a father. I have not nearly the amount of time I used to have to dedicate to these things. Also, that's temporary. My children, however many we have, will not be children forever. And in fact, they reach a point where they just simply don't need you the way they need you right now, when I have a 23-month-old as of tomorrow. And I'll be able to dedicate more time to writing and getting back to that. And I'm not done. Like, I'm in the middle of trying to record Journey in the Dance right now. And the last phase of my editing is always the audiobook, because few things beat reading every word out loud to find out if something sounds right or has weird grammar or you missed punctuation in a certain spot. So there's that. But the lack of suffering in my life has actually made my art a lot different. And it's part of my journey, spiritually, physically, to figure out, what am I still writing for? Because I used to write for escape. And I still have a passion for the imagination and The Escape. I'm reading through several. I just read Earthsea Trilogy again. I'm in the middle of the Night Angel Trilogy for the third time. I'll probably pick up, I might go back to Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time for the third or fourth time. After this, I'm just enjoying reading again. But I also have a 12-book series called Rim I'm planning. I have a 60-book novella series called Freelance I've been planning, both of which I've been planning for 15 to 20 years. Still haven't gotten very far with either. Trying to get Journey of the Dance done. That's largely because I've been sick for a while. And then more than any of those other books, Wendy is waiting on me, the next book in the Pan series. But life is what it is right now. And I wouldn't want to be on my deathbed and look back and go, man, I'm glad I sacrificed time with my family so I could write. I love my art. I love my family more. And I'm learning more than anything to love myself. In fact, one anecdote I'll share with you. Was it last week? I was feeling really tired at work. And what I do for work is I build intranet websites. So like intranet means inside of a company. So if I worked for McDonald's, which I don't work for McDonald's, if I was a staff member at McDonald's, I would have a website. Maybe it'd be like inside McDonald's or I don't know, whatever word you would call it. And I would be designing that functional website that has tools and systems and knowledge and HR systems, things like that. I do a lot of that. And I've been working on a project for a year that is finally coming to fruition. And I kind of plateaued. And then I slowed down, and then my energy started dropping. Kind of to a point where I felt, you would kind of say I was depressed. Not clinical depression, but maybe a mild version of that. And it hit me that that's what that was. And it was because I had reached a point in this project where for the past year, I had been working my tail off to try to get this thing up and running. And such a big driver for me personally is people's praise and validation from other people. And what's funny is I'm 43. I still feel like a young worker hoping to please their boss. And I have a lot of experience. I have a lot of clout. I have a lot of respect for my coworkers. I am senior in so many different regards. And I still feel like a child looking for validation, hoping for praise from my boss and my coworkers to say, oh, you did a really great job. And I wish I didn't. I really do. I wish, yes, I want to know my boss is happy with the work I'm doing, and I want my coworkers to be satisfied with what I'm building. But it's like a deeper hunger. The funny thing is, as I get older, I just kind of realize that the little inner child in you never really goes away. Ideally, you heal to a point where the feelings of that little inner child don't rule you and don't make decisions for you, doesn't make decisions for you. But it never really goes away. You're just a little kid. You just learn how to act better, behave better. I don't want to say act as if it's like you're putting on a show or you're lying about anything. You just learn how to share faces to the world. And so when it struck me that that's what was happening, I used some tactics that I've been learning over the past year or so, actually a couple of years, to change how I talk to myself. And so whenever I felt that kind of super tiredness come on, I would just kind of make sure I'm not around other people. And I just kind of put my hand on my chest and I literally talk to myself like an outsider, like a mentor. And I remind myself, my inner, that little subconscious part of me that's listening, hey, I don't have to always be working on a project that if I'm not doing it or not doing it well enough, then my boss will realize she doesn't need me and my coworkers won't think as much of me. I'm totally working to perform so that I'm not abandoned. And I have abandonment issues from my youth. I had a mom who loved me and worked really hard, and sometimes that meant a lot of late nights. There are certain family members that I wish I had met that I haven't. And so I deal with some of that. I'm healing from it slowly. But it's not gone yet. And it's funny how that fuels what I do at work. And so I work really hard there. But when I come home and I'm surrounded by a loving wife and a tantrumy and loving child, I don't have that fuel at home that I used to, or I don't have the fuel of suffering, of loneliness, of whatever you want to call it. So all that ties together to say suffering fuels art. And I want to be better than suffering. I want to write because it's a passion and a drive. And last example I'll leave you with isn't my own, but how many of y'all have heard musicians that were amazing in their early days when they had no money and they were living out of vans and eating gas station food, and their girlfriends were abandoning them, and their abuse from their parents was still fresh, and then they finally make it big and they get to about album 3 or 4 and their music just becomes garbage because they all live in big mansions and they all have 3 therapists and they all go to the beach in the morning when they're not on tour. And even if they've gotten past the wild lifestyle of women and drugs and alcohol, and some of them never do, then it's just self-inflicted if it is at that point. But if they're able to get past that, they just have easier lives, and the suffering to drive that art is kind of gone. What do you do then? Well, ideally, you find a way to make art less about your own suffering and running away from your suffering, and more because you want to become a craftsman and a master. And you dedicate yourself whether you suffer or not. That's what I want to do. And life is not quite there where I can dedicate so much time as I would like. Anyway, this is kind of one long rambling way to say hello. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for hopefully following, what do they call it? Smashing that like button and subscribing. One of those things. On my website or my socials or here on YouTube. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And if you made it this far, thanks for hanging around. Anyway, have a great one. I'll talk to you guys later.